Yeah, like as an example for us, the boilerplate lease we were originally handed precluded having chemicals in the building. I'm a chemical. Water is a chemical.
Lucian Shapar, May 8th, 2024. I am a chemical. Hello and welcome to the Open Hardware Manufacturing Podcast, the podcast about making open source hardware. My name is Stephen Haas.
And I'm Lucian Shapar.
So today we're talking about renting a space, like figuring out how to grow into like corporate real estate. First, we want to talk quickly about how great it's been to get so much feedback on this podcast. I think this is our 20th episode. And the amount of folks that have come up to us and talked to us about this and said that they enjoyed, and like to everyone that's listening, thank you so much for listening to this. Like we are just two clowns talking about our experience. Yeah. Sometimes it's what it feels like, but
it's amazingly affirming.
It is so affirming. It's really cool to hear that, you know, it's been helpful to a lot of people and that y'all have been enjoying it. So thank you so much for listening and engaging with it. And it's been really cool seeing it grow and seeing people get something from it. So first off, thank you. Part of this came from, we were at the Open Source Hardware Summit this past weekend in Montreal. You can probably hear from our scratchy voices of all the yelling at after parties trying to get over the music. But it was really cool talking with a lot of people at the Open Hardware Summit and meeting a lot of you folks. It was great. It was such a cool event, talking with other like-minded people who are doing a lot of the stuff that we talk about in this podcast. If you're not familiar, Open Hardware Summit is a really cool event that happens every year based around making open hardware.
Yeah, and it's put on by the Open Source Hardware Association, OHM, and it's an amazing event. The people make it what it is, and you'll find your tribe there.
It's a great group of folks. It really is. It's such a cool event. But yeah, so thank you for all the support and thank you for the recommendations. Like we've had so many people in the Lumen PNP Discord server give us ideas for topics and they're great. They're super, super good and they definitely keep the engine burning. So if you have other things you'd like for us to talk about, something that's, you know, specific about shipping hardware, manufacturing, all that kind of stuff, please drop into the Discord. Let us know. It's been really helpful so far.
Yeah, for sure. It helps us out a ton, as we always say.
Yep. Yeah, it really does. But yeah, today we're talking about renting a space. This is a tricky topic. When do you decide to pull the trigger on signing a commercial real estate lease? It's really spooky. So like, how do you decide if you need one?
Yeah.
And then all the stuff to consider when you're picking one. Like that's probably the bulk of this episode is like, what's okay? What's not okay? What are things to think about? What are deal breakers? All the stuff that goes into making that decision.
This is one of the more expensive financial obligations you're going to be putting yourself on the hook for early on. So it's really important to get it right.
Yep.
There's so much to think about.
Yeah.
And it's our hope that we can help you make this decision with a little bit more information in mind.
Yep. And not just like the things that the space affords you, but like as you grow, is it going to continue to afford it to you over time? And like, there's a lot of stuff to consider. How to do the lease negotiation, talking with the landlord, you know, what's up for debate, what's not, all that kind of stuff. And then what goes into having one and then growing out of the space.
Yeah.
It's a weird, necessary part of doing hardware. You need to have a space. Like it can't just be a software company where everyone's remote. You need to have a brick and mortar location in some capacity. So figuring that out it's a really important part of this.
Yeah, this is a good one.
Yes, I've been informed I say, this is a good one at the intros, but it's because I feel that. All the ones that I don't say that to, we don't publish. But yeah, this is a good one. I really enjoyed talking through this and like there's a lot to say in this. This is a beefy boy.
Yeah, and on some topics we only scratched the surface, so if you want us to go in deeper, let us know.
Yep, absolutely.
We got you.
Yep. Cool, let's get into it.
Let's do it. What we're going to be talking about today is renting a space. Renting a space is a really important thing for any company to consider, or even a project. Like, it's a big first step for anyone. Yeah. And it's a really important thing to get right.
Yep.
And Steve and I have definitely learned a lot of what to do and what not to do.
Yes.
Yeah, we thought this would be a really good thing to share with you all.
Yep. I think a lot of what we'll do is if we're thinking about topics to talk about, it's like, when did we do something and we're like, we have no idea what we're doing. Like, we don't know at all what's the meta. We don't know what the process is. And like, that makes a great episode because that's ideally where we take what we've learned and put it into something like this. And renting a space, when we got the office for the first time, there was a lot of hand wringing, I'll say.
Oh, yeah.
So we kind of broke this down into a few sections. The first of which being deciding when to get a space. When should you be thinking about like, all right, I have this open hardware project. When is it worthwhile to like get out of my garage, get out of my spare bedroom and like get a dedicated space for it? This is probably one of the harder ones. You know, it's a little easier to find out which space to get and all that stuff, but whether or not you need one is really the big question to ask. And it's like not at all straightforward.
Yeah. Because working out of a house can be pretty hard for hardware.
Yeah. Yeah.
It actively fights you, and it's important to have a space that is conducive to the work you're trying to do.
Yeah, exactly. Like you can take over a spare bedroom in a garage. Like a lot of cool stuff comes out of a garage. Like I did most of the Lumen dev in my apartment in Somerville, Massachusetts, it was an attic. You can do it, but when you actually start shipping it and you're bringing like pallets of aluminum extrusion in and like that, a house gets really difficult there.
And like maybe your garage is better set up than Steven's happened to have been, but we were sharing 4 outlets.
Yeah, we ran extension cords all around my garage and like it did work, but we couldn't get it warm enough. And this was like in the fall. So we had a bunch of like propane burners in the garage, and my dumbass didn't realize that like when you burn propane, it puts out a lot of carbon monoxide. And I didn't realize for like a whole week, I had like this crazy headache when we were working out of the garage. And then suddenly this thing started beeping in the garage, and I looked up and I realized it was the carbon monoxide sensor.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, I've just been like accidentally poisoning myself in this garage, just trying to stay warm and like being dizzy. Like it was so bad.
Yeah, well, I had the foresight to install them for the laser cutter, but I didn't even consider the propane heaters doing any damage to the air.
Exactly. Or my brain. Yeah, it was bad. So like that's a great example of like if you are shivering trying to do your work and you can't stay warm without being unsafe with what you're breathing, like your space, like I like what you said, your space should work for you. It should be conducive to the work you're trying to do. And if that's what you're dealing with, you should try and find a better situation so you can focus on what's actually, what problem are you trying to solve?
Yeah. And we weren't trying to renovate Steven's garage.
No.
We got it quoted. Wasn't the meta.
It didn't. Yeah. It was like, we should just get it sorted. What are we uniquely good at? We're working on a pick and place. We shouldn't be thinking about renovating a garage. Like, let's let somebody else do that.
Yeah. And a part of this too is focusing on what's scalable.
Yeah.
Like the garage had a cap of just Steve and I being in there.
Yeah.
Like it's not a place that we felt comfortable bringing in outside help.
Yeah.
It wasn't a place that we felt was appropriate to bring in tractor trailers of supplies routinely.
Yes. We probably could have. We could have like hired a buddy and had him come in and help and stuff. But like it wouldn't have been really the kind of growth that we wanted to see. Like we wanted to start a big thing out of this. And like a garage does not a full company make. Like it's great for the prototype, but yeah.
Yeah, it was great in the sense that it gave us all the time in the world to get ready for a plunge into a commercial space.
Right. Yeah.
Like there wasn't a financial overhead.
Yeah.
Like a monthly burn of cash.
Right.
So we were able to leave it when we were ready.
Yeah.
But when it was time, as we'll talk about here, it was a fun challenge.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And another big part of like, do you get it is the money part of it. We'll get into like how to find a place in a minute, but like you'll have a lot of quotes. You'll know how much it'll cost to operate it. How much money are you making from it already? You might not be making any money. And at the time where we got our current office, we were making effectively no money. We were selling like staging plates for like $75 or something.
Yeah, it was nothing.
We had barely any money coming in. We had a little bit of raised money.
Mm-hmm.
But we were like doing math on our runway.
Yeah. Of
like, how long could we be in this office before we literally run out of money? And like, when do we have to start making X amount of money? But we didn't know. Like, we didn't know how much money we'd be making. So much of it is, are you making sales? Would the sales you're already making pay for it? Or have you not launched yet and you have to guess on how much sales you will make? And then is that going to cover your rent? Like, it's all about the burn down calculation of how much money you have and you'll be making.
For us, it made sense when we were at the point of we wanted to make sure we had like a year's rent in the pocket for any of the places we were looking at.
Yeah. And
we also were at the time sitting on the inventory for the first 100 Lumen kits.
Right.
So we knew what that would do for us. We weren't sure how quick they would sell on launch day, or even if at all.
Yeah. We had like a pretty good gut check that like we'd sell a number of them, and like that would definitely help be able to fulfill the lease. Like we'd still be able to do it, but it's gonna be a risk. I think we talk about this later too.
Yeah,
it's gonna be risky, but the money thing is like that's a really big part of it.
And we realized it would, in not necessarily like quantifiable ways, it would cost us more to be in the garage for longer.
It almost kind of pays for itself of like, once you get that space and it kind of unblocks you from being able to ship those things. If you have the demand, it's the amount that you'll be able to make more things and have it be easier and not shivering in the cold trying to run a pick and place machine is you're going to be able to make more of them. You're going to be able to sell more of them. You're going to have your quality be higher. And like, it's going to pay for itself if you have that engine set up, but it's determining if you do is the tricky part. Are you going to be able to turn this responsibility into, a way that it's going to help your thing grow?
It's definitely a big burden to take this on. It's a heavy responsibility to be responsible for a lease like this.
Yes.
But you just have to ask if it's worth it.
Yeah. Like when that lease came through, it was like, oh, we are now on the hook for like a crazy amount of money. It was spooky.
Yeah.
It's a lot of responsibility to take on this lease. Like, it's not like, oh, we could just wrap this up and it's not a big deal. It's like, no, you're in it now. There's a legal document that says you have to commit to this for X amount of time. It's a real promise of future involvement, I'd say, you know? So yeah, you're very much making it, especially with leases can be long for commercial, which we'll talk about later. You're really signing up to do it.
Yeah, I'm going to sound crazy here, but I liked the pressure it added.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, we got to go now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was kind of cool. It was like, nope, now we have something burning under our butts and like we have to make this work.
Yeah.
It's kind of nice to have a little bit of that.
Yeah, and we said to ourselves, like, if we can't make this work, what are we doing?
Exactly. And also, like, if we can't make the pick and place thing work, we had like a list of like 5 to 10 other ideas of like, we could squeak by and pay the rest of this lease doing some other wacky, weird thing out of this space. Like, if we can't, there was a line you said a lot, Lucian. It's like, if we can't find a way to make this space pay for itself, we're dummies. Like, if we have this place, we could rent it out for parties. We could find some way to make it work. Like, having those contingency plans certainly made me feel better about it. And ultimately, none of them have been necessary even remotely, but it's still really good to have that in your head when you're buying this extra, huge obligation.
No, that's most definitely true. Again, it has to be right for you. Don't force this.
Yeah.
For us, it felt like the natural progression. For us, it felt like it was time.
Yeah. And you might not want it to grow like that. If you love just making a couple things in your, apartment or your house, in your basement or your spare room or whatever, and you don't want to take on this responsibility, heck yeah. Like it's all about being honest with yourself about what do you want it to be, because it's a real thing when you have this lease. Like, it's no joke. You're really signing up for a thing. If you want this to be chill and you want to be able to pull out of it very easily and not be on the hook for this lease, and you don't want the pressure, don't do it.
Yeah, like, don't let others pressure you into getting an office if you don't feel ready. A good framework here is it has to feel like the next step. It has to feel like a no-brainer.
Yep.
If you're forcing it to fit, maybe slow down.
Maybe. Exactly. Or get a little, like, get like an office in an office park that is a monthly lease, and like dip your toe into it of like the idea of it. Because, there's another part of this too, is like, you might really like it and you might not want the pressure, but you don't like having work and home be the same place. And like, we experienced this a lot because we were working out of my house for the first like year. There was no separation. Yeah. Like we were working and living in the same spaces. It was constant. There was no like physical separation. It sucked.
Yeah. My bedroom was my office, and I'd go upstairs to see Steven's R&D setup in his bedroom. Yep.
Yeah. My bedroom and my desk, and like, it was tough. When we moved into the garage, it was kind of nice because we had a commute of like my back patio.
Yeah, it felt like we were going to work. We'd pack a backpack. You'd have your banana.
Yeah, exactly. I'd bring my daily.
Like, oh, I forgot something.
Exactly. It's like, oh, I got to go home. Walk across the patio back into the house. But that helped.
Yeah.
But it wasn't the same.
Barriers and doorways are nice here.
It is nice. Like, I'm only like 7 minutes from the office, but that 7 minutes is such a wonderful punctuation of like, I'm leaving home.
Yeah.
And it's good to try and not work at home. I don't really do that often. I still will go home and do work, but it's nice to have the option of like, this is home for relaxing. So that might be a part of it for you. Like, you might just want the separation, in which case having like a monthly thing is great because it's not really the obligation. You might not need that much space, and you could just like do a little hand soldering or, 3D printing or whatever in some little office space with a monthly lease. That's great. But, that might be important to you, of just like having that separation of like, yeah, I need to drive 5 minutes to get there.
For me, it felt really, I didn't like the feeling of being at the house where we were working or when we were working, because it felt like if I was doing nothing, I wasn't being productive.
Yeah. There was no like clear barrier.
Yeah.
It felt like, oh, we're here and this is where work is. So if I'm here, I should be working.
Yeah. 7 p.m. on a Friday, I felt like I should be doing stuff.
Right.
I was like, maybe not necessarily.
No. Yeah. There's a great CPG Gray video called Spaceship U. And he put it out right like when COVID was really hitting hard in like mid 2020. And it's about how you have to separate your space. Even if you are kind of like stuck at home, you have to draw barriers within your house. So it's like, if I'm in my bed, I'm sleeping. If I can't get to sleep, get out of your bed, because you're teaching your brain that bed is a place to be awake. No, there's a place where you eat. There's a place where you relax. There's a place where you work. And we didn't really do that.
Yeah.
We were spaceship everywhere and like everything was blurry and like, yeah. So that's another really big part of it.
It's a lot to think about.
Yeah.
But ultimately, you want to make sure it's time and only you can really know.
Yeah. Yep. Only you can know.
Don't succumb to that pressure.
And what you want it to become. If you want it to be a big thing where you have to deal with an office, like if it's a cool idea to you of like, yeah, I have my office key. Yeah, I have my office. If that feels cool, that's a good sign. If you're like, oh man, I don't want to be on the hook for all that. That's another sign. Maybe it's not a thing that you should be pursuing. Maybe that's not the way you want to take this project. That's okay. That's great. You gotta know. You really gotta know.
Yeah. It can also help to de-risk stuff. Like maybe you're afraid of operating commercially in a residential zone.
Sure. Yep.
Like we have a friend with a print farm where there's like 100 enders operating somewhere in Massachusetts in like a 1-floor house.
Yeah.
And you can't turn on the garbage disposal. If you do, all of the printers shut down.
I didn't know that. That's really funny.
Or a ceiling fan. It's so precarious. It's not fun.
Yeah.
Our buddy's sorely overdue for an office, and she's keenly aware of that.
Yeah. That's a great example of like, yeah, maybe be good.
I'd say like that's a good situation where you got the most out of your house. You could feel good about making the next step.
Right. Yeah. If it's blocking you, if you're feeling the growing pains of like, I see the barriers of the house, it's time. Yeah. If you have 100 enders in a house, please get an office.
Yeah, somewhere with a sprinkler system.
Yeah, somewhere with a sprinkler system. Yes, exactly. That's critical.
Yeah.
Critical infrastructure.
But maybe we've convinced you that a space is appropriate. Maybe we haven't. We can go into what we thought about when finding one.
Yes. So you've decided, all right, we need to get out of the garage. I don't want to pass out from carbon monoxide poisoning. I want separation from work. How do you do it? So the first thing is, where do you actually look for one?
Yeah.
Like, how do you find a spot? There's only a few that we've really found that are successful, and they may not be surprises to you. LoopNet I think is our favorite. It's like Zillow, but for commercial real estate.
Yeah, for rent or for sale.
Yes. It's been really good. I think that's where the majority of the places that we've looked at have come from.
Yeah, I'd even go as far as to say any other place we'll mention is usually cross-listed on LoopNet.
Yeah, exactly. So LoopNet's pretty comprehensive. It is also good about like telling you some of the information. Like commercial real estate is listed in terms of price, in terms of square foot per year. It's not like they say, oh, it's like $1,400 a month, like you would for leasing a normal space, because you can change how much square footage you get. It's big space, and they'll build a suite and they'll build a wall. So it's suited towards commercial real estate of like, it tells you the lease, it tells you how many spaces and how many square feet, and like it's really good for it. So yeah, LoopNet is great.
Yeah, then there's also Craigslist. And Craigslist will show listings again that were on LoopNet, but it'll also kind of show you the smaller, like mom and pop commercial real estate companies where they're not wise enough to put it on LoopNet, or it didn't cross their mind. And you might find some like real hidden gems there.
Yep. Yeah. There's a couple really good Craigslist postings that we've seen. I think we've seen a couple from Craigslist, but we also might have found them on LoopNet. Yeah. So yeah, those are the two big ones.
They'll blur together as you search frantically across your respective city.
Exactly. Yeah. And friends, if you have a connect, like previous jobs I've worked in Pittsburgh, I knew some folks that have rented commercial real estate, and asking them like, do you know an opening? And we actually looked at a place that was in the same building as a place I used to work. That was a potential option, which would have been really cool. It didn't end up making sense for us, but asking people that that have done a similar kind of thing. If you have friends that are also in this industry, what group of people you have, your cohort, and then that way you have a buddy across the hall. Like that can also be really nice.
Yeah. And email all the places you find that you could consider moving to.
Right.
Like go tour them.
Yes. Go on a lot of tours, and you have to do that. Yeah. You have to get the vibe of the place. Like there was one place that we saw that we really liked on the listing, and we got there and immediately we're like, no, there's no way. Like this does not make sense.
Like using the bathroom there would have been a project.
Exactly. And yeah, it just would have been a huge pain in the butt. So yeah, yeah, you definitely gotta get your hiney there and check it out. But yeah, those are really, LoopNet's really the main place where we looked. Craigslist is another good backup, but yeah, I think those are mainly the two.
Yeah, there's also Facebook Marketplace. That's going to be a little bit more shoddy.
Yeah. Yep.
But again, you could find the right place by talking to someone at a coffee shop. Like keep your ear to the ground and learn what's available.
Right.
In today's age, many cities have many open vacant offices.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So many more people are working from home. So many more people are working abroad. Like it's just offices are pretty available.
Yep.
I've been finding at least.
Yes. And like, because we don't have that luxury of having to deal with hardware and we need physical space, it's kind of a boon for us. Like real estate can be pretty available and cheap commercially nowadays. So, you know, and even just if you're driving around in a neighborhood that you like and you're like, oh, that's a commercial building for lease, give them a call.
Yeah. Call
them. Like they're putting that up because they're desperately trying to fill it. Like drive around. I mean, that's even a valid approach. Like there was a place I drive by all the time in a cool neighborhood. I gave them a buzz. It ended up being rented out.
Yeah.
The sign was old, but like do it.
A lot of the time, the old time owners don't use the internet.
Yeah.
And they just put up a sign.
Yep.
And the space it speaks for itself. It's going to go quick.
Yep.
And it's going to be cheap.
Yep.
Because they're not paying a broker or anything.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Call people.
Yeah. Just give them a buzz. It's a good way to do it. And that you also know exactly where the building is. Like you've probably seen it before. There's good things to check off there. Then we get to the part that is arguably one of the most important parts, which is how much space do you rent? And if you're coming from a 1-car garage, trying to like shoot the gap on how much square footage you need when you've never had that much square footage, how do you find out? Like, how do you know how much you get?
Yeah. And it's hard to get right. I'd say overdo it, get a little bit more than you think is right.
Yeah.
Like, our office day one felt gigantic. And now we see the constraints of it 2 years and change into the lease.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Like if it feels like the right size when you lease it, it is too small. it needs to feel like, for our balance, at least, when we were moving in, we were kind of like, oh my, do we actually need this much space? Like, do we actually need this? Perfect.
Yeah.
You should be a little anxious about it being a little too big. If you feel that way, you've thread the needle perfectly, at least in our experience. You know, if that's how it feels, if you know exactly what and this is assuming you're going to grow, right? If you know that, no, I just need to keep doing my same thing and I'm not going to scale and I'm going to keep doing this, you already know how much space you need. You're done. But if you're kind of shooting for growth, get a lot more. I think we used maybe 1/8 of the space, 1/9 of the space when we first moved in. And now we use every square foot. Every nook and cranny has a job. And from many times rearranging it to try and squeak out. We one time swapped 2 rooms to buy an extra foot of space.
Yeah.
Like we really were trying to get it out there. So you can get away with a smaller space. Like Ryan from V1 Engineering, who we've had on here before, he has a crazy big and complicated production that he runs out of like a 2-car garage. And it's awesome.
Yeah, it's optimized. Like
it's optimized.
Floor to ceiling, each spot is considerate, well laid out.
Right.
He has workstations to do exactly what needs to be done in each spot.
Right.
It's great.
Exactly. Like if you have a lot of space, it just means you can be lazier with your optimizations. You know what I mean? Like now that we're really like kind of filling out this space and we're getting close to capacity of this space, we have to be more clever with how we use it. We can't just be like, whatever, I'll put this here. It's like, no. You have to think about you're playing a game of Rush Hour with all those cars you have to kind of slide around. It becomes more of that game. So you can get away with a smaller space, but you're going to have to spend more time on thinking about how it's going to work. If we had 10,000 square feet, we'd spend 0 time thinking about layout or very little, I should say.
Yeah. And for like us, what that turns into is making our assembly stations like pretty generic. Like each station has a couple different jobs. Mm-hmm. If we had more space, I probably would have a workbench per sub-assembly or like major assembly. Mm-hmm. And we're just still trying to figure that out even every day.
Yeah, exactly. Like there isn't like the workbench for building lumens. Because sometimes we want multiple people on that. Almost all the time we have multiple people on that. So we need to have a couple spaces for them to be working and then also have the right sub-assemblies part of that. Really, I think a lot of the bottleneck ends up being how many people can you fit in the space? Like that really seems to feel like the main bottleneck. If you fill it with workbenches and you can comfortably have X number of people in there working, that is your real bottleneck. Like think about how much those people can do and less about the space, I think. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and I could even be more precise about that. You want to, like in a spreadsheet, look at how much of your product can be built per week or per shift.
Yeah.
These people at this bench working this many hours on these tasks, look at all of it. What can you get out of this facility?
Yeah.
And if it's not sufficient for your goals or your expected demand, you either need to reassess the work layout, or maybe the space is too small.
Yeah, that's super true.
It solves itself. Like, we know exactly how many lumens this space can crank out from 1 shift to 2 shift, 3, whatever.
Yeah.
And that's how we helped gauge whether this was an appropriate place to be or not.
Yeah.
It's also how we gauge whether or not we should get a second floor, buy the building, what have you.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like, you have a big, crazy spreadsheet calculator that's like, it takes this many hours to build this at this many stations. What can be parallelized? Like, spend 3-4 hours making a crazy spreadsheet with rough guesses of how long it takes to make certain things, and find out what your max capacity is. Like, what can this space afford you in terms of production?
Yeah, I'll say early on, Steve and I felt a lot of anxiety around this decision. And the most calming thing was numbers.
Yeah.
Like, measuring what our throughput would be with or without a rented space.
Right.
With the ability to bring on employees in a place where it's insurable.
Exactly.
The numbers really,
they help.
They calm the brain.
Right. Kind of a weird aside. When I was a kid, I had like this weird fear that like there was going to be a robber that broke into the house in the middle of the night. And it would like keep me up. I was like, there might be a robber. A robber might break in and like kidnap me or something. I was like super anxious about it. And then I thought, statistically, what are the chances, like little 8-year-old Steven, what are the chances that someone picks this house? How many break-ins happen in a town in a night? Why would they choose this house? And I'm like thinking about the statistics. I ended up looking up how many break-ins. I did the math and I was like, oh, it's incredibly unlikely. This is silly to be anxious about. And I slept like a baby. It's kind of funny, but like, do that for this decision. Look at the numbers. Think about what the risk vector is. Like, how much, if you have, 8,000% growth in the next 5 years, is it still going to help you? That's probably pretty unlikely.
Yeah.
But if you do, like, that's okay to limit yourself on 8,000% growth. If you have 8,000% growth, you can afford to buy out the end of the lease and move to another place. It's not a problem anymore. So some of those crazy percentage chances, don't even think about them.
Yeah, I think we modeled like 0.5% of expected sales through like 4x.
Yeah. Yeah. we had our like, that's right. Yeah. We had 3 like iterations where like our baby minimal, like SpaghettiOs diet kind of thing. Oh
yeah.
Normal. And then like super crazy aggressive, hot, big spender schedule or budget, I should say.
I remember that.
Yeah.
That was, wow.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
We were doing that in the garage. That feels like 14 years ago.
It took so long to convince ourselves that, yes, we could move out and it's going to be fine. But like, once we had that assurance, like, we never doubted it.
No. Once we got in, it was like, okay, this was so correct. Like, even just that first week we were here, we were going so much faster. Like, it was like, oh my, we feel like we could breathe.
Yeah.
Nothing has ever been more anxious until it happened. And then it was like, oh, this was such the decision to make. Yeah, it was really good.
As we just said, making sure that the space is conducive to the work. It's ready to receive everything you might want to do there. And as a bonus, keep an eye out for whether or not the space can facilitate your growth. Like, can you rent more space at XYZ given spot? Right.
Yeah. Are there multiple suites in the building and they're frequently opening up? And is, your landlord chill with like, yeah, you could just get the space if it opens up, that whole kind of thing.
Yeah. We toured one place and the landlord's like, you start here, and if you want more space, we knock down this wall.
Yeah. It's like, oh, what a beautiful thing to hear.
Yeah.
That's such a good thing to hear.
And they were used to startups that come and go. They weren't going to try to like latch on to a failing company for the full lease money.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. That's huge. Having kind of an escape hatch of like, it's easy to move. It's easy to expand if you need to. This is what Formlabs did too. They rented out like 2 small rooms in a building. And now, I think nowadays, the entire building is turned into Formlabs. They just, as the leases ran out in the building for other companies, they just signed on for that lease. And then that company left and then they went on and they expanded. So trying to find a place like that you can expand if need be is such a good thing there too.
For sure.
Yeah.
I'll even say here, like, if you're looking at getting a commercial space for like a small company of yours, like, have some confidence in yourself. Like, even I have a guideline of like not planning for failure. Yeah. We need to have like a model of like, what would that look like and how would we respond? But like, you need to have the confidence in yourself that, yeah, you can handle this.
Yep. And if something goes awry, you're going to find a way out of it. Like, have some trust in your ability. If you've already started a thing that's successful enough that now you're like, oh, maybe I should get a space. You're doing something right. You're doing something very well. Yeah. You are competent. You're going to be able to figure your way out of a snafu. Trust yourself.
Yeah. Lean into it. Double down.
Yep. Double down. Again, if you want to, if you're like, no, I love just doing my exactly what my scope is right now, that's also based on like, do it up. But if you want to expand and you're anxious about that growth, take the shot. Just take it.
So like for us, the risk of hopping into, I think 3,500 square feet.
Yeah.
Greatest choice we've probably ever made.
Incredible. It was such a stressful one, but it was so good. Like taking that leap was so important, and like Opula would not be anywhere what it is if we were still in my garage. Yeah.
We commonly go back and joke about, can you imagine if we were trying to do this out of the garage? And it's always so funny.
It is so funny. Another thing I think, not so much on the how much space question, but just in general, like when we decided to make that decision, we were and still are two dumb punks. And if you feel like, oh, I'm just a dumb punk, who am I? We are too. And you just figure it out. I don't know anything about real estate. You'll figure it out.
Yeah.
You'll figure it out. Call people, hire a lawyer. We talk about that later to give you guidance. You will be okay. You may not know anything about it. You'll learn. The internet is a beautiful thing. You will figure it out. I know a lot about commercial real estate leases now. I didn't know anything before we did it. And you figure it out as you go. Trust in your ability to learn and figure it out.
Yeah, it's not that different than getting an apartment.
No,
or
it's really not. Yeah. There's a few weird things, but once you kind of figure those out, and those are all things we plan on discussing, it's pretty chill.
If you have anxieties and you're really unsure about it, there's so many great online resources.
Yeah.
If you're okay with the extra cost it might add, go with a place that has a broker.
Yeah.
It's their job to get the lease signed.
Yep.
It's their job to quell any concerns, smooth over any like tensions between you and the owner. Yep. It's their job to get the lease signed. We met some great brokers in our search.
Yeah.
And I think some people act like the brokerage is a scam. And I'm like, no, it's just something you're paying extra for if you need it.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Finding one that isn't just trying to make the buck, but is like trying to make a good fit. We found a great one. He was great.
We didn't need him, but
yeah. But it was good to get his perspective because he's done this with a lot of other companies too. Getting advice from other people. Hopping into the Loom PMP Discord server. There's a lot of people in there that have signed a commercial lease and are selling stuff there. Ask questions in there too. You know, like there are communities that you can poke to like get guidance on these kinds of things.
There's so much out there. Just immerse yourself in it.
Yep. Yeah. 100%.
Another thing to consider here when looking for a commercial space is like how much material will you need to store?
Yeah.
Like for us, we had a crap ton of packaging to put somewhere. We had a crap ton of extrusion to put somewhere. Like so much stuff. Like we take in pallets of filament, and we didn't even know that it would get to that scale at the time or at the early onset. Yeah. But we had to model that in. So like consider your inventory storage requirements. Consider what it's like to get that inventory into the building. Yep. Consider how much space it'll take. Yep.
And how much inventory might you have on hand at any given time, which is very difficult to even know. Like there's a lot of cart before the horse here. I need to operate out of the space to know how I'll use it, but you need to know how you use it to know how much space to rent. And you know, how many months of inventory do you want to keep on the shelf? How much square footage is that going to take up? You kind of don't really know. You kind of have to just make an educated guess about how tightly can I pack this and see what you get.
And this is kind of where we got to the point of saying that it's better to overdo it than underdo it.
Mm-hmm. In terms of renting space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's better to overdo it than underdo it in terms of renting space. You don't want to encounter the same problems you had at your like first location, your house.
Right. Yeah. As long as you can afford it, it's nice to just zhuzh it up a little bit if you can squeak a little extra space. But yeah, I mean, if you have to, you can rent a storage unit. Yeah. Like there are ways to just manifest more space if you need it. And storage units are cheap. You could just rent a U-Haul, bring all your stuff there, put it in your sedan. Like you can find you can make it work. Oh yeah. Bring it over there, put it there, a garage. Sometimes we'll be like, do we just move this to Steven's garage if we need to? Like I have a garage. Yeah. You can put it there if you have to. Ideally you don't.
I still want to build my loft.
Yeah. We've been talking about doubling square footage of some areas for just making a loft.
I want a loft and bunk desks like Lego. No, they have the double-decker couch. I want double-decker
Yeah, like from the Lego movie, the double-decker couch.
Yeah, I think Boeing did that during the development of the Concorde.
Really?
Yeah, it wasn't Boeing. Whichever company it was. Yeah. Double desk. Fantastic idea.
Was there like a ladder that you climb?
Yeah.
Are you messing with me? Is this real?
I'm pretty sure. I'm going to check it up real quick.
That's pretty funny.
Concorde. Double desk. This is a hard thing to Google.
Please tell me it's real.
I would have to rewatch a documentary. Y'all can tell me in the
just let us know Discord. If we're off base. That sounds really funny though.
Yeah.
I think you bring that up maybe once a month. Once every 2 months of like, we should just double deck our desks.
I also joke about like whether or not our corporate space could be 2 companies.
We rent it out at night. After everyone leaves Opula, we just have another company that comes in and uses all the same facilities. Yeah. And then our rent is half as much.
If you're out there, hit me up.
We have an empty office for, like 9 hours a day.
Yeah.
Just come in and
if you need a print farm between noon on Saturday and Monday, 8 a.m., let us know.
We got printers. Yeah. Like it is a funny idea.
Yeah.
I like that.
The space is yours to be creative with. If it takes turning an extra room in the corner into a podcast studio you rent out on Craigslist, you can be creative with it.
Yeah. You can find a way to make it work for you. Do you want to take on that extra effort of having to figure out how to lease that and organizing the contract and blah, blah? You can.
Yeah.
Is it critical path? Maybe. If you need it to make ends meet, sure. But just all stuff to think about. There are ways to make it work, There's ways to swing it.
For sure. All right. Before I take us too far into the woods, let's talk about the next considerations here, and that's the lease.
Yes.
What we've found is a wide range of expectations across the commercial real estate industry. The average we usually see from what someone's looking for is 5 years.
Yeah.
That can depend a lot. If you're like Walmart, you're renting a place for like 50 years.
Yeah. Wait, really 50?
25, 50, like a long time.
Oh, I didn't realize.
Yeah. Or maybe it's 10 years. Every 10 years you renew it.
Sure.
They want you there.
Yeah.
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 Think about how long like a Kohl's probably signs up to be in a mall.
Right. Yeah, that's true. It's going to be it's a commitment.
Yeah. But if you're a small open hardware company, no, you can't play that same game.
Yeah, you really can't. Like a shorter lease is going to be a safer bet. You will not find a 1-year lease. It's not like apartments. Like you won't find one.
And if you do, you're paying a high premium. And we tried on the idea of moving, and it's like, that's a 6-month endeavor. If you're more than a couple guys. Like a 1-year lease, within half the lease, you're like thinking about what you're doing next. That's actually pretty short.
Yeah. Like for a company and all of the infrastructure and equipment and like all the stuff that goes along with that, all the systems you set up, you don't want to move every year.
Yeah.
That stinks. That's such a disruption to things. Like it's tough. So, if you get a 5-year lease, or like you can be creative with negotiation and be like, hey, we want a 3-year lease. And we want to have an option to sign on for another 2, or like we do a 2-year lease or a 3-year lease, but we pay a little more in rent, or, depending on your risk vector there, you can negotiate and try and get it a little shorter. Some places will, if you're like, I'm a startup and I don't know what the future holds for me, they might be more lenient, especially if they really want to get someone in and like fill in the space and get some money in hand. They might be down to do a shorter lease because they understand that you don't really know what the future holds for you. Just talk to them. You can get it shorter.
Everything's a conversation.
Yep.
If you can, give yourself the option to extend or to leave earlier than expected.
Yep.
Anything you can do to make this place feel more viable is great.
Yep. Absolutely. And you can even find some leases that are monthly, but those are more like a single office in an office building. You can find some of those things. There are some places that are a little bit more lenient. And like we found a couple places that are suited specifically towards hardware startups. They're way more lenient because they get it. They know that it's risky and they've taken on that risk, and that's fine.
But in general, don't 1 year, plan for more than that. Like we felt good with 3 years. Time and money work different at a corporate scale.
Mm-hmm.
Like Steven and I can blink and we're coming up on a year.
Yeah. It's really weird. A company is like operating your personal finances and housing and stuff, except just like 1 or 2 orders of magnitude bigger.
Yeah.
Or 3 or 4, whatever. Like it's just a bigger scale. Time moves faster, more money, more negotiation, longer lease. It's just, everything is just bumped up a lot.
Yeah. Like I can blink and a week happened.
Yeah. Yeah. That might just be because work is wild.
We move fast.
Exactly.
Maybe others feel differently, but for me, like a year can fly by.
A week gets drank.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's weird.
So yeah, just know that that's what to expect for a duration here.
Yep. And that's okay. That's part of the deal. It's going to be more risky. You are signing on for a longer total commitment of money. And that's what this is. Like you're going to have to deal with a little bit of that. And that's how this works.
Yeah. And then as far as money goes, like there's so many factors that play into an office.
Yeah.
So many. Steve and I aren't going to even remember to say them all.
Mm-hmm.
At the bare level, there's rent, utilities, and hidden costs.
Yeah.
Hidden costs can be things you didn't expect.
Yep.
Hidden costs should be things you try to guess at up front, like parking.
Yeah.
When Steven and I first got this office, we were driving here together from his house, taking one car to our prescribed spot in the building's alley.
Yep.
We weren't thinking about the cost of all of our employees needing to park in the garage next door.
Right.
But if you model it out, it costs like more than the lease to have a certain headcount working in this office.
It is possible for us to fill up the office in such a way that we pay more in parking than in rent.
Yeah.
And we didn't think about that.
Yeah.
You know, so like being aware of that kind of thing is really good. Like what are all the possible things you might have to pay for? You're going to have to pay for internet, and corporate internet, business internet is way more expensive than your normal internet.
Yeah. It's like $200 a month.
Yeah.
It's annoying.
It is super annoying. And it's like the same service that I get at my house, but because it's a corporate address, they just charge you through the nose for it.
Conversely, I think electricity is cheaper, but still.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then annoyingly, corporate internet, you'll have to pay for, at least in America, you'll have to pay for a phone you're never going to use.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we have a
phone that's like, I don't think we've had it plugged in even.
I don't think it's ever rang when it was plugged in.
It never has.
You'll get one of those, I'm sure of it.
Yep. That's how it goes.
So yeah, there's just so many costs that I can think to say.
Yep.
Like, you want to make sure your lease lists who is responsible for maintenance. If there's a rat problem, if there's a leak in the ceiling, like, is that something that you might be on the hook for?
Mm-hmm. And you also have to think about, if you get a lease, you're also going to have to pay for insurance for the space.
Yeah.
If you have employees working out of there, what kind of work they're doing, how big is the space, what kind of building are you renting? Like, your insurance is going to have to cover all that stuff. So considering how much you're paying in insurance is also a hidden cost for getting a space like that. You know, like I had homeowners insurance, but it was nothing. But we were running a business out of it.
Yeah.
You're going to have to get that business insurance. You might even have to get it, depending on your landlord. I think most require this. You need to have that insurance to even lease the space. So that's another huge cost. And that is not cheap. That is really expensive.
Yeah. And these types of costs should be modeled into your consideration on if a lease at a commercial spot is right for you. Like these, you can't let these expenses surprise you or catch you off guard. That's irresponsible.
Yeah. You got to know what you're signing up for.
And like, I could promise you it gets to the point of feeling like the cost of doing business. Like it's these programs or insurances are meant to be affordable for the scales of companies that may need them.
Exactly. It is very possible to make it work. You just gotta know what it is.
Yeah. I can get that it'd be daunting and like it felt it at first, but now that we rock it, just the cost of doing business.
Exactly. Yep. You just got to do some of these things.
But that's hidden costs. So be aware of them. They will get you.
Yep.
When you're talking to different buildings, you can, heating.
Yeah.
Heating and cooling.
Heating and cooling's huge. Yep.
It can be as much as, depending on how your building is heated or cooled, it could be as much as the rent in like the dead of winter, the high of the summer.
Yeah. It can be like devastatingly expensive.
Yeah. Like we were looking at getting places 10 times as large as our current office. That would have been cheaper if you didn't think about heating.
Yeah. But then as soon as you consider that, so like ask the person that is giving you the tour, in the winter, how much is heating? In the summer, how much is heating? In the winter, how much is electricity for AC? In the summer, how much is electricity for AC? Get those numbers. Ask them for them. Like, don't sign anything until they've told you. Or like, you can even request a bill stub for the unit, and they will send you literally, look, this is what I was billed in like, February of 2023. This is what you can expect to pay if you're on the hook for it. Like, get those stubs.
Yeah, take those numbers and even go as far as to modeling out the full cost of being in that lease.
Yes. Yeah. Like, how much am I actually signing up to pay when signing this contract? Because they don't really say that. They say square footage per year. That's the unit that you pay for effectively.
Yeah.
But you kind of have to know every other thing that rolls into that. That's one small part of it.
The cost per square foot per year is just such an abstraction to me. It almost means nothing.
Yeah.
Like that could be the smallest component of the cost of being somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. It really can be.
Like, weird. Look at a Manhattan office. Like I think it's $20 per square foot per year at minimum to be anywhere, but each employee probably paying $900 a month if they had a car.
Yep.
They would never have a car in Manhattan, but you just don't know.
It's possible. Yeah. Yeah. You just have to model it.
Yeah.
You have to model it. Make a crazy spreadsheet.
Exactly.
Make a crazy spreadsheet with all of this stuff.
Yeah. And then when you have that numbers, like look at your runway. Like look at how much cash you'd be burning a month. Like, is this viable or not?
Yep. Are you expecting you'll make the sales, or do you already make the sales, or do you have the money in the bank that you can afford this ad infinitum, after a certain launch comes out, like at least until the lease is done? Think about all those. There's a lot of risk vectors there, but think about what it is how reasonable is it to assume you're going to be able to pay that?
Yeah. Can you think of a good ratio for like how much rent can contribute to operational expenses? I know people personally are advised to not let their housing cost them more than 25% of their like take home after tax income. I don't know.
Oh, really? I've heard
Yeah.
it's closer to like a third or 40%.
Yeah, I think it depends on how urban.
Yeah. Are you in the city or in suburbs?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
There's thresholds like that for corporate entities as well here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't really know. I've never really heard of a percentage like that, because this is also like rent is a small part of what your facilities payments are a month. Your facilities payments is a small part of what you pay as a business a month. How much you paying your employees? How much you paying for stock? We have a thing in this tool that we use to manage our expenses and look at our money of like our minimum monthly obligation, which is like how much money do we have to spend a month, no matter what, our non-negotiables, our internets, our payrolls, our rents, all of this stuff. Like how much needs to leave the Opula bank account every month. You need to know that number. And then whatever you make profit on top of that is like, and how much money you have in the bank is really kind of how comfy do you feel playing it razor thin or having a big buffer?
Yeah. It could feel like a little bit of a leap into the unknown if you're pre-sales. Like Steve and I at the time were just selling staging plates.
We had we had 2 safe notes and we had no sales, which is scary, but we had a pretty reasonable expectation that we'd make some.
Yeah.
So it was worth it to take the risk.
And like these days, the cost of rent is a small contribution to our monthly expenses. Like payroll is dwarfs it.
Way more. Yeah. Rent is not that bad. Like it's become a much smaller percentage as the company grows and the more that payroll is going to be your biggest expense.
Yeah. It's like 70% of operational costs.
Yeah.
I think on average, not us. I don't have the exact number memorized, but any hardware company, that's like the golden percentage, I think people say.
Yeah, assuming that you're taking the cost of the materials and breaking that into out of the profit that you make per product.
Yeah, it's
going to be a very large percentage of what you pay. So that's really more of where a lot of your money is going to end up. But when you're starting out and you're getting that space, the rent's going to be a way bigger percentage because you may not be paying any payroll. You may not be paying yourself. You may be paying just 1 or 2 people, and not like 8 or 10 like we are now.
Yeah, I guess towards that, I'd say understand that the cost you're being shown on the lease will hurt less as time goes on.
Yep.
But it's a big number.
Mm-hmm. if you're expecting growth, it's gonna feel smaller. It's gonna feel more swallowable as you grow. It will only feel better if you continue to grow.
It'll get more good.
It will get more good. It will get less bad.
Yeah, and then like one of the last details here is like when looking at the cost of being in the space, you do not need to have all of it in cash in the bank account.
Yes. Like when you do the math of like, let's say you sign a 4-year lease, you have all your numbers, you know exactly how much it's going to cost. And you see that number and it's like
$200,000.
Yeah. It's like $200,000 or like $600,000 or something. Yeah. And you look at your bank account and you have like $25,000 in it or something. That might be fine. If your lease is long enough and you are making money and you know that you can make your monthly payment with some headroom, they're not expecting that you're going to pay that up front. And I leaned very hard into feeling like I wanted this. Like we had a very large percentage of our lease in the bank when we signed it because we were so risk heavy. And I wanted to really make sure that we had some runway to figure stuff out if things did not go well with launch. But you don't need to have all of it. Like, yeah, you're signing up for a thing, but you're signing up for a thing to help you make money. And if you don't already have that engine that's making money, probably shouldn't be getting the space.
Yeah.
Or you don't have a reasonable expectation that you will be making money like we did. If you don't have X number of signups, like we were literally talking to our landlord of like, hey, look, we're making effectively no money, but look how promising this is. Look at this YouTube channel. Look at these signups, these, pre-purchase signups, and like showing them that we had a good chance of that.
Yeah. I remember calling them and being like, I have a year's rent and $80,000 worth of unsold machines.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that good enough for you?
Yeah, exactly. And that's a convincing enough. You don't need to have it all in the pocket. You will make money. You have 3 years, 5 years, whatever it is to make that money. That's okay. It doesn't have to all happen at once.
Yeah.
That number will seem scary and it should, but it's over the course of a long period of time.
And even if you have to vacate the lease, like it's not the craziest thing. Like the landlord has to do their duty of trying to find someone to buy out your lease.
Yep.
If you tell your landlord today, oh, hey, I want to break the lease, you might only be on the hook for 3 more months.
Yeah.
It could be okay.
You can have these terms in the lease as well. If you're really, really anxious about it, it's very possible to like put a contingency plan here of like, hey, I don't know if we're going to be around in a year.
Yeah.
I want you to, and that's really good because then your landlord's aware of that and you're on the same page. And if it happens, it's not an uncomfy thing. It's like, hey, remember that thing we put in the contract? It's happening. We've already talked about it. You've signed it. Like that's a really good way to do it.
It's a homey thing to bring up these concerns before it gets tense, and it has to be discussed.
Yep. Yeah. Especially if your landlord is used to working with startups and understands, that's the name of the game.
I also want to take a minute here and say, if you're really worried, make sure that no one's personally guaranteeing that lease.
Yeah.
Only the company should be able to get hurt by it, not you. As an entrepreneur moving in the open hardware space, it's all really risky. You need to make sure that you can close the door, move on to the next thing without something coming back to bite you.
Yeah, exactly. Make sure that the landlord can't come for your house.
Yeah.
You know, like you're trying to do a cool thing and making sure that you don't get nuked because you took a shot and it didn't work out. You want to make sure that you don't get nuked from orbit.
Yeah.
It's a tricky one. You can choose to protect yourself and make sure you can put it in the lease that you're not personally guaranteeing it, the individuals, and it's really just the extent of the company.
It's important to take risks. It's important to try to be aggressive for success.
Yeah.
And if you're really concerned about personal liability, it could slow you down and help or make you choose things you wouldn't have otherwise.
Exactly. Yeah. You may not take as many big swings and do really, really cool stuff if you're worried that you're going to be personally on the hook. And you shouldn't be. A person operates at a different order of magnitude than a company. For a person to be on the hook for a $600,000 lease is like terrifying and like doesn't make sense. You know, like it should be the business. And if the business goes under, like you should still be able to operate as a person and have your savings and be okay if this thing doesn't pan out. So, you know, it's all right to protect yourself like that.
Yeah. And if you find a landlord trying to force you into one, it's a sign of the relationship to come.
Yes. Yeah. It's a good thing to avoid.
But yeah, that's money. There's a lot to think about. Hidden costs, runway, thinking about the full cost of the lease. Like just keep all of this in mind. Your situation might be different. You might not need to think about money. Maybe it's a family friend that'll let you be somewhere for free for a year.
Yeah. Yep.
Like it's just all important things to have modeled out.
Yep.
Like this is a quantifiable decision here.
Yep. It is. And always make sure you sign a lease. Even if it's a buddy, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Sign something. Get it on paper. You want to make sure this is a business. Like you gotta have a document. Gotta make sure it's kosher. Like you can't just be like, okay, cool, I'll move my stuff in and it's a agreement, like word of mouth. Get it written down.
Yeah. Imagine if your family friend locked you out because someone died and like the estate went into probate. Like,
oh yeah. And they need it. Yeah, exactly. Like you have to, I was like, died? What? Yeah. What kind of business are you running? I know what you mean. Yeah. Like you got to just make sure you're good.
Yeah.
You got to have it written down. It's really important.
Yeah. It just can't feel precarious.
Yeah. When you're picking a place, figuring out what facilities are in the place are really, really important too. Like depending on what kind of thing you're going to be doing, you might need a shop sink. You might need ventilation. You might need 3-phase power. Are you going to have a lathe? Are you going to have a milling machine? Do you need it to have a really sturdy base to put it on there? Are you going to be able to get, a Tormach into the space? You might need that. Or air conditioning and heating. Like all of these we talked about this a little bit already, but like, do you have fiber internet routed up? This was really important for us. Like I really want to make sure we had it, but you may not care. You may not really need fast internet. There are a lot of things that are like, what can the space facilitate that you need to be aware of before you pull the trigger on it?
And you have to think about it not only in the immediacy, but also in like the moonshot. Like what's the most we could need out of this space? Like
in
presently,
the lease term.
Yeah. 2 years into this lease, Opulo does not need 3-phase, but we made sure it was here.
Yep.
You want to be able to have your space include facilities that are there for you.
Yep.
Like we wanted to make sure an injection molding machine could operate here.
Is there a place and a power hookup that we could have this thing running? No problem. Like that was important to us.
Mm-hmm.
One of the most important things, if you are running a hardware company, what is the loading dock situation? You are going to have to ship pallets of stuff. If you are shipping anything that is probably worthwhile getting a decent manufacturing office space, you're going to need a loading dock. You're going to get pallets.
Yeah.
What is the pathway? Like visualize, where does the 18-wheeler big rig come and pull up and load off the pallet? A lot of places will charge you an arm and a leg for liftgate service where they take it from the height of the truck and they bring it down to the floor. It ends up not being that much, but they're going to charge you extra. If you have a proper height loading dock, they can just wheel your pallet in and you can bring it on a freight elevator up to your facility. That is the dream.
Yeah.
It's so important.
There's nothing worse than breaking down a pallet in a hurry so that the driver takes the pallet back in the dead of winter.
Yeah. And there's people waiting on you because they're trying to get to their parking space. Like, it's a nightmare. And also the other way around, how are you getting machines out? If you're shipping pallets to a distribution facility, if you're just shipping out, a box of orders direct to customer, whatever it ends up being, you're going to need to move a lot of objects, heavy boxes in and out of this space. what is that path? You should know exactly what that path is. Is the doorway wide enough to facilitate the U-line pallet rack that you might need to move? Like, these are the kind of things you need to consider.
Or even like, do you have a place to put a forklift?
Right.
Would that be important to you?
Yeah.
All of this at like end game scale needs to be considered for you in that space.
Yep.
We kind of, I don't want to say we screwed up, but we underplayed the importance of this. And we have to receive pallets in a driveway.
Yep.
And it kind of stinks.
There is technically a way that we could receive a pallet. There's like a like kind of like fold out loading dock thing, but the doorway that would receive them in is not big enough to receive a pallet.
Yeah, it's super fake news.
It doesn't work. So we have our own way of making it happen, and it's less than ideal. It's fine. We make it work, but like it could be way better.
The dream is you're in a facility where each major mail courier is already visiting them daily.
Yes, there's already a pickup. They just come as part of their operation, and like you don't have to set a pickup and effectively tell the service to come pick up the package that you've already made a label for and everything. They're just there. And there's already a section of the loading dock that says UPS. And the UPS guy knows, okay, these are the things I put into the truck. Off you go.
Yeah, the more conducive your stuff is for receiving and exporting goods, like the less the building is in your way.
Exactly.
And that's awesome.
Yep. And this also goes for like UPS and DHL in terms of the delivery driver, like access to the building. You know, if they come and pick stuff up, is there a mail room where like you can receive a package at any time of day? For us, there's a coffee shop on the first floor of our building. It closes at 2 p.m. Yeah. So delivery drivers can't get in to drop stuff off at 2 p.m. So we have to be really verbal about like, please call us after 2. The coffee shop isn't open and like you won't be able to drop off the package inside the mail room. You have to know what that's going to look like. Like, how are they going to be able to get in? Are our delivery drivers going to be able to boop themselves into the building, get into the elevator, come up to our space, whatever? Like, you got to know what that looks like and know if it's going to be a pain.
And this is all a part of your responsibilities, designing a manufacturing line. What's the flow of goods?
What's a flow of goods? Yep. Mm-hmm.
You have to have that full picture. When you're doing the initial tour of a facility with the landlord or the building owner, like imagine what a box goes through to get in or out.
Yep. Yeah. It's wild.
Even the trash, like you have to consider, how does trash leave your facility?
Yep. Are there dumpsters? When are they emptied? What day do they come pick it up? How much trash are you going to make? Is there a recycling service? Are there enough dumpsters to facilitate all the stuff that you're going to be moving out? You got to know. And you got to make sure it's going to check the box for you, at least well enough.
Yeah. Like you can get your landlord to double up the trash pickups. But again, that'd be another hidden cost.
You'd be paying for it.
You should be hyper vigilant of the flow of goods.
Yep.
The flow of the flow of goods, the flow of waste.
Yep.
All a part of a manufacturing plant.
Yep.
Every single plant, no matter the scale, has to consider these things. And so will you, even if you're one person looking for your first office.
Yep.
For your first product.
Yep. That's true. Should have been part of the space thing, but I just thought of it real quick. You know, a lot of what we've been talking about so far is about manufacturing, like actually building this stuff. You might need a meeting room. You might need an R&D space. You might want a couch. Like we've been talking about all of this space being just for the process of actually making the thing. But you need to be designing it. Where are desks going to go? Is there a kitchen?
Yeah.
Is there a place where you can microwave a sandwich or like, I don't know why you microwave a sandwich, but you know what I mean?
Steven doesn't heat up any food.
I always eat my leftovers cold. I don't know why I do it.
Animal.
Or like how many bathrooms are there? Like, is there a quiet place where you can take a meeting? And if you have like your automatic screw gun running in the background, you have picking places, picking up parts. Is there a quiet place where you can take a meeting?
This is a place that early on, you might be there aside from time sleeping at your house. You might be there more than you are home.
Yeah.
You have to like it.
You have to enjoy being there. And like, that is worth spending more money. If you hate going into work because it feels dingy and sad, don't do it. There's no point. Like you have to, and like with some asterisks, because sometimes you do kind of have to suck it up. If it's the meta, it's the best thing that you have available.
Yeah.
Do it. But like, don't underestimate how important it is to enjoy where you go. If you wake up every day to go do this thing to a place that you hate, it's going to color your entire existence there. Like try and find a place that you're excited about and maybe wait for another place that checks that box a little bit better. If you aren't excited to go into it.
You have to feel happy and safe there.
Yep.
It needs to be conducive to humans.
Exactly. Yeah. It has to feel comfy. You have to feel like you want to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like towards that, like you really need to think about like, where is your spot?
Yeah. Where is it located in a couple different ways? Like geographically in the city, what's traffic going to look like? How are people going to get there? Is there good public transit to the spot? Like some of your employees may not have cars.
Yeah. We wanted to make sure like college students could get here without owning a vehicle.
Yep.
And that precluded a lot of places.
It
A lot of
did.
places that have been way cheaper and way bigger, but it's important to be accessible.
Yep, absolutely.
We looked at this one place out in the sticks. This was hilarious.
Yeah.
We, Steven and I went to this like
It's like a business park thing for like entrepreneurial startups.
Yeah, it was like
stuff,
coupled to a
kinda.
university in a small way. And
Yeah.
we just toured the outside of the building and we talked to the security guard and he's like, the rats are vicious here. When the companies go under, you got to get to their abandoned stuff quick before the rats do, or it's all gone. And we're just like, whoa.
Yeah. And it was out in the sticks.
Yeah.
It wasn't a nice place. It was hard to get to.
And the dude was like, yeah, that hill over there is the only way here. And in the winter, they don't plow it till 4 p.m.
Right.
And it's just like, okay, game over.
Exactly. Yep. Immediately disqualified. Like getting there it's going to happen twice a day for every person at your office. You're going to have to get your hiney into work.
Yeah. Even model like how long will you spend in a car getting to the spot?
How expensive is it in terms of your time and your employees' time of just getting there, getting to work? Yeah, that's important. Also, like, is there stuff nearby? Like, a lot of folks here go out and like walk around. We're downtown Pittsburgh. We'll walk around and go get lunch. We're actually right by a T stop, subway. So you can take the subway anywhere into downtown, grab a bite to eat, walk around, do something fun. Like if we're working late and we want to go out and grab a drink after work, there's bars open. You can go like have a beer and just hang out. It's not as critical. Like this is definitely like pretty low on the list, but it also adds to vibes. Like, do people enjoy going to work? Making sure that people like being at your facility is so important for like it being successful.
Yeah.
And this plays into that. It's not hugely important, but like you want to make sure you're giving the folks that are working for you something to do. It's still something to think about.
It has to be somewhere people want to go to.
Yeah.
If you're bringing an applicant for an interview and they are in the middle of nowhere, the nearest food is a vending machine next to the firehouse, so it's going to look bad.
It's yeah. You want to still be attractive for hiring new folks too. It's tough. But yeah, if you can swing it, like we have a coffee shop on our first floor. It's great. And it's closed at 2, like we said before. So it's kind of like free for meetings and stuff. And like sometimes we'll all just go hang out down there and like, it's really nice. It's a pretty good setup. So like, is there a place you grab a cup of coffee? And like, it's part of it. It's something to consider about like, how's it going to feel for you and your employees to come in every day and like grab a bite to eat?
Yeah. Like, or even what is it like to bring in a client or a vendor? Like, does it feel appropriate? I remember one time Steven and I brought in our packaging vendor to have a meeting with us in his unfinished kitchen.
I'm like halfway through renovations in the kitchen and like, like trying to rip out old cabinets or whatever. And like, we're having what feels like a business meeting and my mom's dogs were there.
Yeah, they were yapping.
And it was like, we're trying to talk business and we're like these two clowns in this half renovated kitchen trying to be serious about it.
Yeah, we were trying to punch up to work with a major packaging vendor and like we had yapping dogs.
Yeah, it was so scuffed. It was really scuffed. But that, and he was good about it. And like, he was great. He believed in us and all that. But think about what it's going to feel like to bring a vendor there and be like, yeah, this is a legitimate facility. This is a legitimate business. They're going to be in business. They're going to do work. They're serious. It's going to matter. Like the optics of that matter for your employees. It matters for the other people you do work with. Take that into consideration. You don't want to be like 2 years in a lease and now you're like bringing vendors over and you're embarrassed to bring them there because it doesn't feel like the kind of business they might want to be working with, built up enough, whatever it is. Just keep that in mind that that's something that you're going to be doing.
Because your space will represent you.
Mm-hmm.
You need to be proud of it.
You got to be stoked about it. And it can be really hard. Sometimes those places are quite a bit more expensive. And it's okay if you can't quite get the place that you want to. Just know that people will see that and be like, this represents the scale of the thing. And like, maybe I can't expect a really big contract from them or not. Like it matters. People think about that. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah.
It's a difficult one though. Sometimes you just can't swing one of those bigger places or places that are going to feel a little bit nicer like that. That's okay. Just know that that's part of the equation.
And luckily Rustic Factory is in. And it's usually cheap.
Rustic Factory is in fact in. Yeah. And you know what? There's a lot you can do to make something feel cozy and cool. Like one of the old places I worked, they got like a kind of a crappy, dingy space and they just like made it feel really cool. Like they did a really good job of just like making it feel interesting and like feel like a good spot. Did a world of difference. So yeah, think about that a little bit too.
Definitely important.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Next is negotiating.
Let's say you found the right spot. You like the idea of being there. You can imagine yourself being happy there for a good while.
Yep.
It's time to look at the lease.
Yep.
I need to tell everyone like the importance of negotiating. Everything is debatable.
Yep.
Everything's a discussion before the lease is signed. And like read the crap out of it.
Yeah. I think we had 2 or 3 back and forths with the landlord before we had a final version. Like we had one redlined version and then he made an update and then, yeah, he had a redline version and then we took it back. And like when we had a lot of emails back and forth, it's okay. It's going to take a while to negotiate all those things out and like make sure we're all on the same page about it. But like take that time. That's fine.
Yeah. I cannot stress enough the importance of communication here.
Yep.
You need to communicate to your landlord everything you might possibly be doing in the space.
Yep.
You cannot be in violation of the lease day one.
Yep.
You need to cover your butt and make sure that you're going to be able to operate however you'd like to there within like the bounds you've described.
Right. If your landlord ever knocks on the door and asks to like come in and say hi or whatever, and you're ever anxious, like, oh no, they're going to see this thing, immediate hard stop. You did everything that you're doing and think you might be doing needs to be in the lease, agreed upon. Can be no surprises. You need to be on the up and up about this because it's just going to cause friction. It's going to cause a problem. You can't do it. You can't do that. Make sure that you're on the same page with them about exactly what's going to be happening in that space because it's their building. You're using their building. You got to make sure you're not going to mess it up in a way that they're not stoked on.
Yeah. Like as an example for us, the boilerplate lease we were originally handed precluded having chemicals in the building. I'm a chemical. Water is a chemical.
Lucian Chapar, May 8th, 2024. I am a chemical.
Yeah. It's like, no, we can't get told IPA is inappropriate to have in the building.
Right. We need to rinse SLA prints. Like we gotta be able to have, we gotta have that.
You don't want to feel like you're sneaking around. Like you need to be able to give your landlord a tour of the place and not have to hide anything.
Exactly.
So like put everything out there.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. Be super transparent about it. It's so important.
Yeah.
Coming from someone who's leased a lot of apartments and has done exactly that, not told my landlord that I'm building a flamethrower or keeping a gas engine in it or whatever.
Yeah.
And feeling anxious about that. If you want to play that game with your personal apartment lease, that's fine. Whatever. Go for it, gamer. But for a business, no. This is a different thing. You have to be so communicative with them about exactly what you're doing. Like, I would never want my landlord coming into one of my old apartments.
Yeah.
You can't do that in a corporate lease. You can't do it.
No. I mean, and it's a give and take here.
No, you can't do it in your normal lease too, but I think it's just more whatever.
If you ever meet Steven, ask him about some his college dorm experiences.
Oh, yeah. I almost got kicked out of college.
That's one for offline.
Yeah, I messed up. It was, I tried. Yeah. I don't know how I'll share that story, but yeah, that one was, that was bad.
Ask him in person.
Yeah. Ask me if there you go.
But like we got our landlord to strike the no chemicals clause off the lease. And in return, we said we won't use leaded solder.
Yep.
Great.
Mm-hmm. And that way now we're never worried about it. We keep IPA in here in the normal legal restricted amount for like what's safe. We keep it in here and it's awesome. And we're not worried because we've cleared it up ahead of time. Like it's so important to do it.
And then like as a part of negotiation and lease signing, like get a lawyer.
Yes.
It is a cheap $200-$300 USD.
Yep. Just have someone look it over.
Yeah.
It can't hurt. Like it's the easiest thing in the world to just find somebody, have them look at it, review it. It'll add a couple extra days, 3-4 days, maybe most at, your turnaround for it. That's fine. It's going to save you so much time and anxiety in the future, knowing that a lawyer looked at it.
This might sound a little strict, but if the cost of legal counsel reviewing your lease is prohibitively expensive, you're not ready.
You shouldn't get one. Yeah. Yep. I think that's a pretty fair thing to say. It should be a small amount of money in comparison to how much your lease is. And you can find them pretty cheap. It's a few $100. It's not too bad.
Yeah.
For a business.
Just do it. Cover your butt.
Yep. Just get one.
So that's negotiation. Just remember, everything's debatable.
Yep.
Show your cards. Make sure you're not going to be sneaky.
Yep. And trust in your spreadsheet. Make a crazy wackadoo spreadsheet with all of these numbers, all these contingency plans, copy it, make an edit for a more conservative view, a more aggressive view, like use the spread. We spent so much time just staring at that thing, like thinking about all the permutations and like risk vectors of it.
Yeah. One more note here. I'll even say like vagueness in the contract will favor the person who issued it.
Right. Yeah.
So like ask a lot of questions. Like just don't accept undefined things.
Yeah. If something feels vague and you're not quite sure how it manifests, ask them to put a clarifying sentence in there.
Yeah.
Or suggest a clarifying sentence.
We gave the landlord our version of the lease we wanted him to sign, and he just did.
Yeah. He was like, yeah, all this makes sense, because like it's pretty likely that a lot of what they send you is also pretty boilerplate.
Yeah.
And they might have some, bits in there from like times they got burned before too. But if you ask for something, they might be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like we were like, hey, IPA. We need to have IPA. And he was like, oh yeah, of course. Sure.
Yeah.
You know, and it was fine. Most of the time that's really going to be what it is.
And you may find that you're thinking about the lease and the language of it more than the owner ever has.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very possible.
That's been our experience.
Yes.
That's why they're usually negotiable.
Yep.
But let's say you've sorted that out and you're in your spot. So like, what is it like to have your own commercial spot?
Yeah.
There's a lot you might be on the hook for.
Yep.
Like maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
You have to understand like your AC going out or the toilet overflowing.
Yep.
Like all those types of things that can really hit you.
Yep. There's going to be more to maintain. You know, you do have a landlord. The landlord's going to make sure stuff happens, but like you have a second house in a way.
Yeah.
If there's a kitchen and you're making dishes, there's another sink full of dishes to clean. There's stuff to think about and maintain, a whole new space to clean up. You know, we actually have a weekly cleanup on Thursday afternoons at 4:30. We all stop what we're doing and we clean the entire space for like at minimum 30 minutes. It's awesome. Yeah. But you have to do that. You have to, it's a thing to maintain. You have to make sure it stays operational and good. Most of the time it's pretty smooth, but there will be things that come up.
Yeah. Entropy's a pain in the butt.
Yeah, it is our duty as as manufacturing engineers and as humans to fight entropy and try and create order from the disarray. And having a space is another bit of entropy you need to shepherd.
Yeah, it's very well said. I think a lot of this makes it feel daunting to even consider corporate space or commercial space. But I really have to assure people it's worth it.
It is. It's so worth it. Like we had, what was it? Was it Memorial Day or something? There was like a long weekend and Lucian and I came in to work. We brought a 6-pack of beer and we just kind of hung out and rearranged a whole section of the office.
Yeah.
And we needed to do it on a weekend so we weren't disrupting production. That was fine. We had a fun Saturday. We just hung out for like 6 or 7 hours, drink a beer, shooting the shit, whatever, and rearranging things. But you might have to do that. We made it fun, but there's a lot of other different kinds of work that come in to having this big space. But that's part of the deal. And it's super worth it if you want to grow.
This will become a source of pride for you quickly. Like there's nothing more gratifying than like showing your mom or dad, like, look at our office.
Yeah, we have this really cool place where we do this cool thing. And like, yeah, it's cool. It's cool. I like that. It's a place to take pride in. The other big part of having one is your landlord and communicating with your landlord. We got so lucky. Our landlord is awesome. He's so cool. He's he's a good dude. He understands. He's like started businesses before. He gets it. It's fun hanging out with him.
I'd take a bullet for that guy and he'd say the same.
Yeah, he's great. Like he really is good. And the guy who does facilities for the building, also a gem, super good dude. Like so much of this is you're dealing with who the people are that are working with you to help maintain this relationship. So like we happen to get really lucky. Make sure your landlord's like cool. You know, it can be hard to find a cool landlord, but you know, make sure that you can work with them and say, hey, we're having this problem. Is there something we can do about this? Or like, you're making too much noise at this time and the floor above you doesn't like it. And like, they reach out to you and they're like, hey, could you keep it down there or whatever? It's going to be a discussion. You're going to be able to figure out a balance there and they're chill about it. You know, make sure they're a straight shooter.
It's a good sign if you're down to have a beer with the guy.
Exactly. If you're down to like hang out with your landlord and get a beer and hang out, like our landlord throws a Christmas party every year for everyone in the building. It's fun. It's great. Everyone in the building comes down and hangs out. You know, he brings some of his buddies and like, it's really good. So, you know, make sure that you like them. If you get a text from your landlord and you're like, this guy, I don't want to have to, no, like you can't, you can't, that's really tough. You know, it's really important to find someone that you like.
Yeah. I'll go as far as to say the owner of the building and the landlord, maybe they're separate people. Mm-hmm. They need to be as good a fit as the unit itself.
Yeah. Yep. 100%.
Like it cannot be an adversarial relationship.
You're trying to be mutually beneficial. Like they're providing you a space to do your business. You're providing them money to help them make money. You're working together. You know, you should both be stoked about the arrangement. You should both be excited about it. You should both be communicative about it. But this is really hard. This is one that you don't like. You can write down on a piece of paper all the statistics about a space. It's very hard to like quantify or, you know, have a qualitative, like definitive qualitative analysis of a person in a relationship, especially until you get into that relationship quite a bit. Like we knew we really liked our landlord before we signed, but we really only started to see how wonderful he is years in.
Yeah.
Because we had more exposure to him. You know, we talked to him more.
And there's some hacks. You could front load this a little bit. Like during the tour, point at the AC unit and ask him how he'd handle it breaking on us within a year.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you get the guy's vibe.
Yeah.
You know, like if they're super like argumentative or defensive or whatever like that, that's going to be a sign about how things, and they just met you, that's going to be a sign of how it operates, you know? If they're very amicable and like communicative about things and like, yeah, we'll figure that out. It's a good sign that they're a good fit.
Yeah, we were on a tour once and then the dude was like, if you don't like it, don't take it. I'm just like, oh, well, see you later.
Yeah, okay, bye.
quickest departure.
Exactly. Yep. Quickest snow in the West.
So make sure it's a personal fit. Make sure someone you could drink a beer with. It's hard to drink a beer with a corporate faceless entity.
Yeah. Yeah. They can be fine, but like it's risky. They don't really care about you. Like our landlord like is excited about what we do. And he comes in and like we just kind of hang out and like, you know, kind of riff about stuff. And like he's stoked about what we're making.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. If you can get that, I'm sure that's probably pretty hard to find. If you can get that, oh, that's such a good thing.
Hang on to it.
Yeah, hang on to it. Yeah, yeah.
And like the facilities manager feels like a part-time employee at times. Like when we're getting in a lot of freight, he'll roll up his sleeves.
Yep. And he'll let us know like, hey guys, you got a bunch of stuff down here. And we're like, awesome. Thank you. Like he's great.
Yeah. He'll let the mailmen in to drop off packages when we're not there.
Yep. Yeah.
Your building can be a community.
Mm-hmm.
Your building can have businesses that are like-minded.
Yep.
The other businesses in your building could share resources. Like really look for it.
Yeah. Would you hang out with other people in the building? Like, you know, is there a cohort of people doing a similar kind of thing that you can hang out with and, you know, discuss stuff with? And like, it can be really nice. Sometimes it's hard to find, especially open hardware companies.
Yeah.
They're few and far between. But if, you know, you happen to find someone that's doing at least something tangentially related to what you're doing, it's cool to have some folks nearby in person that are doing something kind of similar.
Yeah. It's affirming.
Yeah.
In a special way.
Exactly. Yep.
So yeah, that's the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure it's a good one.
Yep.
It'll set you up for success. And on the next topic, growth.
Yes. Yeah. So if you're thinking about getting a new space, if you feel like things are getting a little tight, they might not be. Like, so, you know, we felt like this a little bit, I don't know, maybe like 6 months ago or whatever. And we realized that our bottleneck is not space, it's people.
Mm-hmm.
Like we have stations for building things that are empty. And there's plenty of space that we could hire more people. And every square foot is used up in terms of there being something like a task allocated to it, but there isn't a person allocated to every task.
Yeah.
So the way that we grow is not necessarily more space. We might be full at capacity in terms of space, but we can still greatly increase our output by just hiring more people to help.
Yeah. We have a space where we could build 4 times more lumens than we do now.
Yeah.
And it's important to model it in.
Yep.
That's what gives you the room to expand to keep your space working for you.
Right. So if you know you have that much potential growth, maybe stay. Maybe if you still have a lot of runway there and, you know, it comes time to renew your lease, should do it. You should renew your lease, I should say.
Yeah.
You shouldn't move, you know, because you still have more runway there. Why would you take all the time to move and spend more money on a bigger place when like you could just hire more people? So that was a big learning that we had.
Yeah. A new space, a bigger space can be a really shiny thing.
Yeah.
And like it can be really tempting. And sometimes it's not the move.
Yes. Yeah.
When cool opportunities arise to get a bigger space, maybe for less money or the same money, it might still not be worth taking.
Yep.
Because it's such a disruption to move shop.
Yeah. Like, especially if you're a startup, it's good to defer a move until things are maybe a little bit more stable. So like when you first pick your place, pick a spot that you can kind of hunker down and get things sailing smoothly. And then when you can like afford to have operations be offline for a while and you can move pretty quickly, but like how much money do you have in the bank that you can pay for movers?
Yeah.
Yet you feel comfy spending like what can be quite a chunk of change depending on how much infrastructure you have, you know, moving it to a new spot. It's a real disruption to move. It's a lot of planning. It takes a lot of time. It's expensive. You might want to kind of stay in that place and try and make it work for a little bit longer until it makes sense, until you know that the train is on the tracks and it's chooching along, that you can kind of coast for a little bit just until you get to the new spot.
And this is why we were saying earlier that a year lease is nothing.
It's nothing.
Like, you don't want to be moving shops every year.
You don't.
That sucks.
For neither party. Like you might feel like 3 or 5 years, 4 years, whatever is a long time. And it is, but like once you get in there, you're gonna be like, I never want to move again. And you want to pick a place that you can grow into so you don't have to think about that until that many years is up. Because it's just so much. It's not moving your personal stuff. It's moving the stuff for an entire organization. So much more difficult.
Yeah. For the longest time, Steve and I were excited at the opportunity to get a second floor in this building. Yeah. And it was a big shiny thing we were vying for. We were nervous that when a floor opened up, someone would get it before us.
Yeah.
So when one came up, we were ready to pounce.
Yep.
Like we were ready to write a check, and we toured it. We slept on it like many, many times.
Yes.
So then we did a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
And we said, this would cost more than a very nice sports car over 5 years.
Yes.
Just to double our space.
And we didn't need more space. Like, I would much rather take all that money and put it into hiring someone else. And then we get more production.
Yeah.
Like that's really what we need, you know? So try and avoid the shiny. It's really hard to say no sometimes of like, wow, this place is really cool. And like, we could do XYZ in it. And like, you really have to be pragmatic about it. Like it is, your space is a tool. And if the tool is not going to, if it's going to sit there idle, or it's not going to continue to make you money and sell more machines and grow, you shouldn't do it.
Yeah. This takes discipline. Like maybe defer your personal office.
Yeah. Yeah. It would have been really nice. Like, you know, I like the idea of having a door I can close and I can just do deep work and focus really hard.
Yeah.
And I don't have that now. And I was like, oh man, it'd be really nice to have that. And this new floor had small offices. I'm like, I could just go do that. No, it's not worth that value. Find a way around it. I put my headphones on very aggressively and I found a way around it and it works great. That's way better than burning a sports car so Steven can get his corner office. Like it's not a good use of money. You have to really be critical against your own inclinations when you're thinking about getting this more, growing into a new space. Like you really got to need it. If you're busting at the seams, go. Yes. Sign on. Like if you're like, oh my gosh, we have full people, we have full space and we have orders we can't keep up with, sign it right now and go and grow.
Yeah, and we run 3 shifts.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. If you've exhausted all that stuff and it really makes sense, grow.
Yeah.
Do it. Like 100% sign on. You just have to know that you're doing it for the right reason, you know?
Deferring the second floor when it came up taught us a lot.
Yeah. Yep.
That
was really a hard decision.
It really hurt to say no.
It hurt to say no because it was really cool and it felt like it was growth, but it's not. Like the real growth is, what's your bottleneck? Is your bottleneck space? If it's not, you don't need more space, but you really have to be honest with yourself. If your bottleneck's more people, you're trying to figure out how to hire another person.
Yeah.
If you can still do it in the same space, don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
You will have another opportunity to get another space. You can, when your lease is up, you're never more than a couple of years away from being able to upgrade and get another spot. You can make a lot of wacky stuff work for 2 years in a tight space.
Make a skill out of realizing what earnings of yours are optional.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. It's really hard. It takes a lot, like you said, it takes a lot of discipline, but like you have to be really self-critical. This is a business. You can't do the thing that feels fun and exciting. You have to do the thing that's going to work for the organization.
How you react to growth and success needs to feel like a no-brainer.
Yep.
You can gamble, you can be a little risky, but it just all needs to be modeled.
Exactly. You have to understand exactly. You can't do it blindly. You can take risks. We still do. We still will take risks, but it has to be something that you have reasonable confidence is going to be successful. You've done your experiments, you know, you have some data about it. You just have to.
Yeah.
You have to do it.
So on growth, you need to pay close attention to what growth is genuine.
Yep.
What growth is real.
Mm-hmm.
Recognizing when it's time to react to continued growth, continued sales.
Right.
Learn when it's optional.
Yep.
Like sometimes there's fake signals on, okay, it's time to react to growth.
Yep.
Learn the real ones.
Exactly. Like
it's hard.
What is your rolling average window for how well are we doing right now? Looking at your past week is way too wacky derivative of how the company is performing. You can't look at your past week. You can't look at your past 2 weeks. You need to look at your last month. You need to look at your last 90 days. And that's where you start to get more of a trend. Your last 6 months, your last year. That's where trends show up. If you look really small locally, even a month, you know, some months budgets renew, budgets don't renew. Like there are so many other weird things where like a month can be slow because of some third order artifact that's messing with things. You can't even let that affect your judgment. You have to look at like kind of a longer time scale to gauge what your growth is. And like, yes, we are consistently over a long period of time seeing that we're growing in this way and we should get more space to facilitate that. It can't be a knee-jerk reactionary thing. You have to look at a long time scale.
Yeah. A given sales week, a spicy given sales week might make you want to double your production team.
Yeah.
And double your production space.
Yeah.
And then the next week will be slow.
Yeah. It's like, you can't be that reactionary. You're running this, you know, a company is a freight train and it takes a lot of time and coal to get that engine running faster. And just because you have a lot of localized signals, you get more coal, you get less coal. I'm really stretching this analogy, but bear with me.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't really matter. Your train is still, it takes so much inertia to speed it up and slow it down. You can't step on the gas as soon as you get that signal. You have to make it steady and even keel, because otherwise you're going to overshoot. Your PID loop needs to have a really low derivative value. So it's not very reactionary, higher proportional, lower derivative. So you do look at those signals, but it's not that much of an influence.
Yeah. And balancing this out is probably one of the harder things Stephen and I have to do as like leaders here.
Yeah.
It's really hard to tell if you've made the right choice.
Mm-hmm.
You'll know looking back, but all things might feel equally good.
You'll know in a year. Most decisions that we make, we only know if it like pays out like 6 months to a year ahead of time, which is so freaking annoying.
Yeah, you just have to get used to it.
Only like a year ago were we like, yeah, this office was like patently a good decision.
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, that's actually not true. We knew pretty quick it was
immediate, but it was affirmed. Like
it was affirmed. Yeah, exactly. Like, but there are other things where we make, even smaller localized decisions, like product decisions. When do we ship? What do we prioritize? You only learn way down the road. So you have to look at a longer time scale. Don't lose the forest through the trees when you're looking at how the company's trajectory is doing. A local signal is not indicative. And it's really hard when all you have is your first launch day. Your local signal is a crazy day of sales after literally nothing. You still kind of can't pull too much from that.
So keep that in mind in the moment.
Yeah. When things are feeling really great or not that great, go back and look at your last 90 days. That's really how things are doing. Yeah. Your local signal is not strong. It's not indicative of really anything. It's just noise. It's statistical noise. So yeah, when you're thinking about that kind of thing, be aware of that. Look at your trajectory.
I think it was the Greeks that said like, you walk into the future facing backwards.
Yeah.
And I really love that one.
I thought you were going to say the one where you should make all decisions twice, one sober and one drunk.
Oh, that one's great too.
I love that. It's funny.
The important ones, we definitely follow that.
Exactly. We talk about it very thoroughly, and then we have a beer, and then we talk about it again.
Yeah, and then we change stances and screw with the other.
Yeah, exactly. We play all devil's advocate.
Yeah.
Yep.
But in general, plan for your growth.
Yep.
Understand how you'd react to not growth.
Yep. Yep.
And this is the thing to be excited about.
Yeah.
This is all an awesome problem to have.
It is.
Anyone in this position is fortunate to be thinking about this kind of stuff.
It is.
Like acknowledge that and like pat yourself on the back.
Yeah. You've done something cool. If you're getting to the point where you're thinking about this, like that's pretty rad. It's a lot of responsibility. I'd be lying if I said it didn't really add quite a bit of stress to a situation, but that's okay. If this is going to be a stressful endeavor, this is what you're signing up for. That's part of it. It also comes with a lot of fun and a lot of freedom.
Yeah.
You're going to take on responsibility to match that. That's how it goes. You just got to know that that's what you're signing up for.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
We definitely have a couple more gray hairs for it, but I wouldn't give them back.
I wouldn't give them back. I'll happily cherish those gray hairs.
I hope everyone appreciated all this advice. We're certainly still learning as we go here.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've only been through this process once, and we've looked at a lot of spaces. We've done a lot of like negotiation and talking with people, but we got really lucky, and I think we did a pretty good job our first pass at it.
Yeah,
but it's tough. It's a really tricky thing to do. It's hard to get this right, but you'll figure it out.
Yeah,
you got this far. You will weigh those pros and cons, get that spreadsheet, do some math, figure out the game plan. You'll be all good.
And if anyone listening's hearing all this and still unsure, DM me on Twitter, message the channel in the Lumen PMP server.
Yep. Yeah. There's a really awesome community of people that are building a lot of open hardware. Ask how people are doing it there. Like a lot of people are using the Lumen to make their boards in our server. Like ask how they're doing it. How much space do you need for it? What was the risk of that? Like there's a really cool group of folks in the Lumen PMP server. So there's a link in the show notes if you want to pop in and chat if you're kind of on the fence about what to do. It's a great group of people.
Yeah. And this is one of those problems where like, I have that joke I've made before, like 80% of businesses are the same.
Yeah.
Anyone has to consider the overhead of a commercial lease.
Yep. A lot of even if you're not doing open hardware,
you
still have to think about this if you're like, I don't know, farming crabs or something. Like you have to, you have big tanks of water and like your aeroponics or like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of other weird things. You're going to have there's a lot of overlap.
Your mom's friend that runs a bakery can give you some great advice here. Like just talk to people.
Exactly. I worked at a bakery in high school and like talking with my old boss there. It was very interesting talking to her about when I was in high school, talking to her of why this space.
Yeah.
They were thinking about moving when I was working there in high school. It's like, why? Like, why would you do that? and so we had a great conversation about it. Like a bakery and a pick and place company are weirdly the same.
Yeah.
Like there are some things that are very different, but like there's so much overlap. Like anyone that's ever had to do this is going to give you some really cool insight.
Yeah. And I'd love to hear about what you took away from your time in a corporate spot if you're listening.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, pop into our Discord and tell us what you've learned. If one of these things went awry, I'd love to hear about that.
Same.
What happened? Cool.
All right, let's wrap.
Let's do it.
All right, folks, that's it for this one. Thank you so much for listening. Please don't forget to leave a review wherever you get your podcasts. It really helps us out a ton. You can find Opulo on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And please don't forget to check out opulo.io and sign up for our newsletter where we write blog posts and do customer interviews with other folks building cool open hardware. That's it, and we'll see you in the next one.
Oh, that's where I'm supposed to say goodbye. I don't know what to say. Bye. That's all I got. In my head, all I have is see ya.
Oh my God. Leave him hang. Steven's looking at me like, keep going. I'm like,
no, you have to say see ya, Lucian. I was waiting for you to say see ya.
It'd be weird if I said see you in the next one. See ya.
You're right. That would be weird.
I don't know how we got into that. Like maybe I.
No, you did it all right.
After.
I just got in my head. That was a Steven problem.
No,
see ya, everyone.
Why don't we run into that often? Because I usually read the out.
I don't know. I think my brain is made of oatmeal, and it just did not grok that.
Something weird happened there. How do I often read the outro, but also am the one to say see ya after you said something?
You say see you in the next one. I say thanks everyone, and you go see ya.
Oh, I'm redundant then.
That's okay. Now, people look for it now. It's funny.
Anyway,
all right.
No, I'm just memeing.
Yeah. I don't know what happened to my brain where I'm like, I got stage fright. I was like deer in headlights. Like now I have to say goodbye and I don't know what to say.
Yeah.